Hello and thank you for joining today's webinar where we're going to talk about effortlessly integrating SCOM with Teams and Slack. But before we get into that, let's just quickly set the scene by looking at Connection Center, which is the suite of products that our Teams and Slack integrations are part of. Essentially, they make it really easy to connect SCOM to a number of tools to both pull data into SCOM and push data out of SCOM. And we're working on this list of places all the time, so let us know if there's a destination you want alerts pushing to or a system you want alerts to be pulled from. But at the moment we're covering systems from ITSM tools like ServiceNow and Sharewell, and also messaging tools like obviously Teams and Slack, which is what we're going to be talking about today, but ultimately anywhere you like using the magic power of webhook, both inbound and outbound. All of which you can do without writing a single line of code. A really important point because, not everybody knows how to code fundamentally, and even if you do know how to code, it takes a lot of effort and time. Everything that we do is wizard driven, all from a very nice, easy to use UI, so all with no code. So let's dig into what we're going to be demoing today. So we're going to be using a few different tools for what I'm going to be demoing today. Starting off with obviously SCOM in the middle, generating those alerts, which we're going to be pushing into ServiceNow and obviously to Slack and to Teams. So it will all start with those SCOM alerts, which are raised when stuff goes wrong. We'll be pushing them into ServiceNow as an incident, and we'll also be pushing them into Teams and Slack as messages. And that's the basic gist of what we're going to be doing. Relatively straightforward. The whole idea behind this is that the teams that are consuming those SCOM alerts, ultimately you need to take action on them, get real-time notifications in the tools they already live in. So for an engineering team, that's more likely to be Slack. For a business or possibly operations team, there's a chance that that's going to be Teams. You might have both of these tools running in your business, or maybe just one. And for anyone that's sort of on the ITSM front, it doesn't exist unless there's an incident. So there is power to integrating into multiple places rather than just into a single place. So let's have a look at a demo of what this looks like in practice. Okay, so we are in the SCOM console, obviously, and we're in the administration pane, and we're looking at the UI for Cookdown Connection Center, which is all structured around what you want to push or pull, be it alerts, be it maintenance requests, and we're adding to this list over time with things like events and objects as well. But right now we're looking at outbound alerts, essentially outbound notifications, and I have a connection to ServiceNow. I have a Sharewell and a Logic apps that are disabled as well. We're going to add in here a Teams and a Slack. And I'm going to start with Teams. I'm going to do this from scratch so you can see exactly how easy this is. So in Teams, I'd go in Connection Center, I go Add Connection, I go to Microsoft Teams. We need to give our connection a name, which is, let's call it Teams. We're going to call it Infrastructure General Team, which is the team we're going to be pushing alerts to inside of my Slack, my Teams deployment. We're then asked for a webhook URL. Well, where do you get that from? Good news is it's really easy. So this is Teams, obviously. You can see I've been pushing alerts from other places. We're going to set up a new connection. There are already existing connections here that will continue to operate, but we're going to come in here and we're going to look at, if we're adding a new one, what we would do is we'd come here and we go to incoming webhook, we would hit configure. If it weren't there, you would search for the word webhook and it would come up. You give a webhook you want to create a name, give it an image and hit create, and it would give you a URL. But I already have a bunch of these configured, as you can see from what's in the background. So I'm going to go here, go to connectors and see what my existing ones look like. So if I go to manage configured, you'll see I have 3 configured in fact, which is just truly unnecessary. Let's have a look at this one. I'm guessing these probably all share a webhook URL. You can see that the modify UI is exactly the same. They have a different picture that you can choose and a different name, but the webhook URL I believe is the same. I'm going to copy this to the clipboard. I didn't actually make any changes, so I'm going to cancel out of there and out of here so we can see the alerts when they come in. And if we go back to SCOM and paste in our webhook URL here, that's all we need to do. If we want to set up a proxy, we check this box and put in proxy details. I don't have a proxy, so I don't need to do that, but I do need to enable my connection. We then are asked what message format should we use, the simple one or the detailed one. The detailed one will push through a few more properties from SCOM, and then we can choose whether we want to include a link to a web console or not. I'm going to include a link. The link itself, you can change the name of the link. I'm going to be using the squared up dashboarding tool to be linking to. So I'm going to change the link name to view this alert in squared up. And then it's asking me for the format of the URL for the dashboarding tool. At the end, you can see we've got 0 in parentheses. That is replaced with the alert ID. So all of this bit before needs to be the URL, sort of syntax and structure for your dashboarding tool. If I go into Squared Up and look at an alert, which is what this is, you can see this is the URL, and right up to the equals point is what the syntax looks like. And that's what I'm going to copy, basically. So there we go. And if I go to Connection Center and paste everything, so that after equals we have parentheses 0, that should work just fine. We're then asked to pick the criteria that will govern when alerts are sent from SCOM. Now, because this is a demo, I'm going to leave this simple and push everything up, but if you wanted to be more specific, you could do so. This would be useful if you're, connecting SCOM to multiple different channels, which is, let's face it, highly likely, because then you'd create a different connector for each different channel and pick different criteria. This screen is actually the same screen as you would see when creating a notifications channel subscription in SCOM. So how this works will be very familiar in terms of, how you specify things like a specific priority, let's say, or and all these conditions together, and specific name, etc. But for this demo, I'm going to leave it simple and leave it to notify on all alerts. You're then asked where you want to store this configuration, and I'm going to leave the default of the Connection Center management pack. You could pick any management pack you like as well, or export the output to XML if you're under change control and it needs to go through some change control system first. But there we go. I'm going to accept the defaults and hit finish. By doing this, we will create both the connection itself and a monitor. So we monitor the connection using SCOM, which is very sensible, given SCOM is a very in-depth monitoring tool. And the first thing we'll do is we'll wait for the connection state to go green. So you can see at the moment it's in waiting for connection test, the warning state of my tri-state monitor. So what we're going to do while that test is running is come here and add a second connection for Slack, which we're going to use as well. Very, very similar process. We're asked for a name, Slack, what's my channel called? It's called hash SCOM alerts. And then we're asked for our URL. So to create a URL from Slack, it's mildly more complicated. We go to api.slack.com /apps in your, when you're logged into your Slack instance, and you would create an app here like this. So create a new app. We're going to do this from scratch. It's really, really easy though, I promise. So we're going to call this demo webinar SCOM alerts. Doesn't really matter for now. We pick a workspace in which we want the app to live. I'm going to pick my Cookdown workspace and go create app. You're then asked, what do you want to add to your app? Now, there's obviously lots you can do with Slack apps, but all I'm interested in is this guy, incoming webhooks. And we need to slide it on. By sliding it on, you get a bit more information around what they do, and we need to add a webhook URL. By doing this, you're asked for permissions and which channel you want to give permissions to. So I'm going to find the SCOM alerts channel. There it is, and go allow. There we are. Success. Happy days. So we now have our webhook URL in our app. I'm going to copy out this webhook URL, so it's in my clipboard, in my Slack. In Slack itself, you can see I added this integration to the right channel. We're in the right channel right now, so that's good. But we're going to go back to now the SCOM console and paste in that URL like that. Again, we need to enable our connection, and we need to specify the type of message. This time I'm going to pick the detailed message type so you can see the difference. And again, we need to put in our web console link. So I'll just get that quickly out of Squared Up once more and paste that in like this, and then go next. Again, I'm going to leave the default criteria of notify on all. You could be more granular, and I'm going to save the configuration in the Cookdown Connection Center management pack and go finish. So the next thing we'll need to do is wait for these connection tests to run. Depending on what else is going on, they may take a moment. So we'll just give these a moment to run, and then we're going to push up some SCOM alerts. My ServiceNow connector, I should say, that was here before we started this call, has been configured to only push SCOM alerts when they're in the raise alert resolution state in SCOM, which is a custom one I created. So we're waiting for, so we're going to push a SCOM alert into that state, which will push them into both ServiceNow and to Teams and to Slack. So let's just wait for these connection tests to come back green. Hopefully they do, and go from there. Okay, so those connection tests are clearly taking a while, which is fine to actually start. I should still be able to use my connection, so I don't have the knowledge and certainty that it's definitely going to work, which is never good for a demo, but hey ho, we'll give it a go. So I'm now going to go to the monitoring tab, and I'm going to find some alerts to push places. Here's one from a custom MP I wrote a while ago to monitor the London Underground for a bit of fun. For another webinar, in fact. So I'm going to push this into the raise incident state. So clearly there's some issue with the Bakerloo line today. So by pushing this into the raise incident state, it should get sent to Teams, to Slack, and also into ServiceNow. So let's have a look. Let's start off with ServiceNow. Obviously not the focus of our webinar today, but it completes the story basically, which is important. We're expecting an alert to appear in this table here. So we're going to give this a moment to happen. It could take up to a minute. The SCOM alert will get evaluated against these creation rules that govern when a received alert is raised as an incident in ServiceNow or not, and it will get matched to one. I'm not going to go into the details because it's not the focus of today. I'm expecting a SCOM alert to get raised as an incident. But for now, I'm just going to check one comes in. There we go, TFL line status, the Bakerloo line alert is here. So that's good. If we go to Slack, let's see. Here we go, demo webinar SCOM alerts app has raised the alert. And here is my link to view this alert in my dashboarding tool. So if I click this, what should happen is it opens in, Squared Up, and here we go. We can see the specific SCOM alert. We've appended the ID to the end of the URL, as you would expect. So whoever it is that has to go and fix the London Underground in this case and fix the Bakerloo line can actually take action on it. And if I go through to Teams, here we go. You can see my connectors here have fired, and this is my simple alert. And again, there's my button to view this alert in Squared Up. So there you go. You can see I had existing connectors still set up here because I have it twice. But you get the idea. So this would allow teams to live in the tool that they would typically live in, and take action on these alerts from where they would live. All without writing a line of code, all UI driven, all point and click. It's a really powerful integration, and it's great for exactly this purpose. Okay, good. I can also see that my connection tests have now succeeded, which is great because, we pushed alerts through and I proved it works that way too. Obviously, it's a monitor that's keeping an eye on the connection, so if things degrade and it stops working, you'll know about it from here and from SCOM in general. So there we are. Back to slides now. We're going to look quickly in slides at sort of the power of using multiple integrations together just to get a feel for the sorts of things you can do before we end this webinar. So we're going to look at another similar but slightly different example. In this case, we have an alert that a server is down raised by SCOM. This alert we can push into ServiceNow as an incident and also into Slack as a message, which is basically exactly what we just did except for my TFL alert. We could push this alert also through using the power of webhooks into Azure, into Logic Apps, and to trigger a restart of the VM. But we wouldn't want that to just happen, so we would probably want to ask somebody for approval first, which we can also do with Logic Apps. And we want this approval to only be given once the machine itself is in maintenance mode in ServiceNow. Now, most IT organizations and infrastructure is under change requests, so that the person who needs to approve this would probably need to go into ServiceNow and put in a change request for an emergency change. But we don't want to have to manually also go and put the machine in SCOM into maintenance mode to prevent other alerts from being raised. So using Connection Center, we have the change request, put the machine into maintenance mode automatically, which once we know this, the person in question can approve the restart, which will restart the machine. This information is obviously picked up by the monitor in SCOM that detected the server was down, so the SCOM alert saying the server is down is closed. This can trigger the incident being resolved and all the right people being notified by Slack. So you can see here, by joining the dots between all your existing tools, you get a lot more sort of power and sort of configuration options than you would by simply using Slack or Teams. They're sort of really designed to be used together. We're not going to demonstrate that today. There is another webinar that demonstrates this, and you can see a recording of on our website. All that's really left to say is if you like what you've seen, go to cookdown.com/connection center, where you can take a trial, book a demo, and of course ask us anything you like. And thank you very much for watching this webinar. If there are any questions, I will take them now. So Q&A time begins now. Thank you.